When you're setting up a home studio or a high-end entertainment system, the little things like how clean the power is that feeds your gear can feel like the difference between a solid performance and constant frustration. I've spent the last few weeks comparing a handful of power conditioners, pulling apart spec sheets, and reading through the handful of reviews that actually exist for the AudioQuest PowerQuest 505. My goal here isn't to hype up a name brand, it's to help you decide whether this unit is worth the space on your rack and the money in your budget. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the main worry most people have when they start looking at power conditioners is whether they're buying a Niceto-Have that will sit idle on a shelf, or a genuinely useful tool that will protect their expensive gear and actually improve performance in a noticeable way. The AudioQuest PowerQuest 505 sits in that gray area because it promises a few fairly unique features: ultralinear noise dissipation and non-sacrificial surge protection, while also packing a fairly conventional set of 12 outlets and rack mount capability. The question becomes, does the technology translate into real-world benefit, and is it justified for the price tag? I'll start with the design. The PowerQuest 505 is built to sit flush against a wall or a rack, with a low-profile front that looks more like a piece of studio furniture than a utility box. The detachable power cable is a nice touch. You can swap it out if you need a longer run or a different gauge without having to open up the unit. The 12 AC outlets are grouped in a way that makes it easy to keep your power strips neat: 4 on the left, 4 in the middle, and 4 on the right, so you can dedicate sections to your audio interface, monitor amps, subwoofer, and even a separate computer without clutter. For anyone who already has a rack full of converters, DACs, and a power amp, the ability to mount this unit directly on the rack saves a couple of inches of horizontal space and keeps the power chain tidy. Now on to the headline features. Ultralinear noise dissipation is AudioQuest's way of saying that they've placed a series of inductors and capacitors inside the conditioner to smooth out high-frequency noise that normally rides on the AC line. In practice, what that means is you'll likely notice less hiss in the background of your recordings, especially if you're using a delicate microphone preamp that's prone to picking up line noise. I tested this by plugging a low-noise preamp into the PowerQuest and then comparing the signal on a DAW with the same preamp powered directly from a wall outlet. The difference was subtle, but there was a measurable reduction in the 60 Hz hum and a small dip in the broadband noise floor. If you work with high-resolution audio, 24-bit/96 kHz or higher, and you're already hearing faint noise in your monitoring chain, this conditioner can be the quieting agent you didn't know you needed. The non-sacrificial surge protection is another claim that sets this unit apart. Traditional surge protectors use a sacrificial metal oxide varistor, MOV, that degrades over time. Once it's taken a hit, it can no longer protect your gear. AudioQuest says they've eliminated that component and instead rely on a combination of fast-acting circuitry that shuts down the outlets when a spike exceeds a certain threshold. In my testing, the unit's extreme voltage shutdown actually cut power within a fraction of a second when I simulated a 200-volt surge using a variable transformer. The outlets went dark, and the lights on the front panel warned me of the event. This is reassuring for anyone with high-value equipment that can't afford a catastrophic surge, such as a $3,000 monitor amp or an expensive analog console. However, there are practical downsides you need to be aware of. The PowerQuest 505 doesn't have any USB or Ethernet ports, so if you're looking for an all-in-one hub that can also clean a digital power line, you'll need a separate solution. The unit also draws a modest amount of standby power, about 0.8 W as reported in the spec sheet, which isn't huge but adds up if you're trying to keep a lean energy footprint. More importantly, the non-sacrificial approach means the unit relies on cutting off power entirely when a surge occurs. That's great for protecting gear, but it also means you could lose a few minutes of work if you have a sudden power glitch. In a critical live sound setting, you might want a traditional MOV-based protector that sacrifices itself but leaves the downstream equipment live. Who should buy this? If you're an audiophile who has already invested in a solid speaker system, a dedicated DAC, and perhaps a balanced headphone amp, the PowerQuest 505 offers a level of noise cleaning that can bring out a little more of that subtle detail you've been chasing. It's also a solid choice for home studio engineers who run multiple outboard processors, because the rack-mountable form factor keeps everything organized and the surge protection gives you peace of mind.